Dan Deming of KKM Financial joins us now for a closer look at the market action. Good to have you here, Dan.
Thanks for having me, Ange.
So some big news coming out of Amazon last week, and I know you were watching the NASDAQ. So what's your anticipation for the market here?
Yeah, you know, the joke last week, actually, Angie, was the fact that Jeff Bezos said to Alexa, you know, buy me some Whole Foods, and you know, all of a sudden he bought the company. So it is an interesting dynamic. Certainly, if you look back, it kind of does make sense because they have been pushing their way into that area for the last couple of years. But it rattled the market. We saw some reaction. The NASDAQ has reacted accordingly, not so much to that news, but more so to the other news that came out earlier in the week, where you saw, you know, some downgrades in Apple and some of the other big tech names. So we saw a disconnect last week. We saw volatility pick up on the NASDAQ, and it didn't necessarily transfer to some of the other sectors, particularly like the SPX or the Dow. So that's something that we're watching this week.
Are big caps still the leaders in this market?
They appear to be, and when you look at last week's action, they're the ones that held up the best. When you saw the Russell come under some selling pressure last week, those are the small cap names. We saw the NASDAQ come under some selling pressure. The SPX held in there relatively well, but then you look at the Dow and it held in there very well, really basically right on its all-time highs.
We have some interesting events unfolding this week, including Brexit talks getting underway today between the UK and the EU.
Yep.
Will that affect the market?
I don't think initially, unless there's some outlier that comes, you know, in the plans that as they roll them out. I think it's going to be a lengthy process. The market is already expecting that eventually it will get accomplished. So unless there's something very unique in there or something that the market doesn't anticipate, that I would think that it's going to have too much focus on what's going on there this week. Traders
are also talking about consumer sentiment took a tumble off of the COMEY hearings.
Yeah, at least that's what it equated. You know, that's what it is equated to, and also I think some of the other things that we saw last week as well. But that seems to be the catalyst. And yeah, we did see some, you know, tempering of consumer sentiment, and that certainly will impact the Fed moving forward. And the market probably will keep an eye on that. If that becomes a trend, the consumer really has helped keep this market afloat. So that's not a trend that the market wants to have persist for any length of time.
We will hear from a number of the Fed heads this week.
We will.
Could that be a market mover?
Oh yeah, always. You know, because right now the market's in that no man's land. We got the announcement last week, got what we expected, the quarter-point rate hike, but now the market is really discounting that move, and it's not even pricing in a move till basically December. And if we get some, you know, talk out of the Fed officials this week that could change that dynamic, you know, we could actually, yeah, it depends. If they're hawkish, we could see that change dramatically, and that's going to impact the market. And if they're not, or they're a little bit more dovish, when they price that December move out and there's not going to be any moves the rest of the year, we could see a big move in the bond market, and also that could impact certain sectors within the stock market.
Well, thank you for bringing us up to date.
Thanks for having me, Ange.